Supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to the Dynamic Dog Owner. I hope you are all well. As you all know, if you're a regular listener, this is the podcast designed to support you in your dog parenting journey. And today I'm going to be doing some myth busting. So we often talk about our Facebook group, Potter Paws Dog Training Community. It's basically a group for dog people who are in our world, normally people that have trained with us or are interested in what we do. So obviously as a podcast listener, you are very welcome to join our Facebook group. Our trainers are in the group every day, able to answer questions, provide advice. So do head into that space if you would like to become part of our interactive community rather than just listening to the podcast. Last week, I asked, what are the common myths you've heard about training or dogs in general? And I thought it'd be quite interesting if I answered the myths or gave my opinion and my thoughts on the myths here, because I find talking so much easier than writing, quite simply. So I will pop a link if you happen to ask a myth or you saw the post. I'll pop a link to this episode in there so that you can see the answers. But I'm just going to go through them and see kind of what we think about those myths. So one of the myths was, this person got their first dog when he was a year old as a rescue, and they were told that a 1-year-old rescue dog was too old to do any training with. So I suppose it kind of goes into that thing of, you have a window of opportunity to teach puppies stuff, and after that, like, window closed, you can't teach them anything. Absolutely not. At 1 year old, a dog is so young that you have so much opportunity to teach them. So much opportunity to teach them new things. This is like regardless of how old your dog is, but when you've rescued a dog, there's always that element that you never know their past. You never know what's quite gone on in their life, as to whether they've been mistreated, treated well, been able to get away with certain things, been reinforced for certain behaviours, whether they've had negative experiences. All of that is unknown. So I think we sometimes just need to take it with a pinch of salt and say, okay, it might be a slower journey. I may have to account for things I don't know about and learn about them and their learning style and how I teach them, because some dogs will need a pressure off approach. Some dogs will be more enthusiastic, but absolutely not. At 1 year old, a dog has so much more opportunity to learn. Absolutely they do. So that is, load of rubbish. And this one's, so that's quite interesting, because that's like the dog's too old to be trained. The next myth or sort of story that someone had was that their neighbour had a 16-week-old collar puppy, and they'd asked them about whether they were going to puppy classes, and they said, oh no, she's far too young to train. And you kind of go, okay, so 16 weeks is too young, a year's too old. When is this magical window of opportunity then? This one I completely disagree with, but it's a really common thought. So years ago, so think back to kind of like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s-ish kind of period. Generally speaking, traditionally, majority of dogs who undertook training were working dogs. It wasn't something you did for fun. Most dogs had a working purpose, and therefore a lot of dogs that were trained because they needed to be trained for a job. So think collies, working like gun dog breeds, etc. And unfortunately, back in those kind of periods, the methods used were not kind, ethical methods. So a lot of people didn't actually train their dogs until they were 6 months old, because at 6 months old they were strong enough to cope with training because the methods were a little bit harsher. Let that one sink in for a second. So you're strong enough and big enough to have harsh treatment. That's when I'll learn and teach you. We now know a hell of a lot different. And we know puppies are learning every minute of every day. They are learning in their litter. They are, most breeders, if you've had a breeding experience, you'll know that most breeders introduce new sounds, new sights, new textures, new surfaces. Many puppies have already been taught to be toilet trained, already been taught to do very simple actions, usually sit and touch and a little bit of recall maybe. Some of that has already happened with some breeders. We know puppies can learn. It's a bit like saying we don't bother teaching a baby to do anything till they're 2. Well, obviously we teach them to talk, to eat, to communicate. We teach them so many things. So that's rubbish. So at 16 weeks old, I would say absolutely not. Now, most people get their puppy at 8 weeks old, which is the norm. 8, sometimes 10 or 12 weeks. There's lots of, again, difference in opinion as when you should get your puppy and how long they need to be with mum, when they need to come to you. But they do have that window of opportunity to come home and to kind of experience new things. That doesn't mean they can't be trained. Most puppy classes will welcome puppies into puppy class from 9 weeks. And it's probably, think of it this way, the longer you leave it before going to a training class or starting training, the more opportunity your dog has to learn bad habits, or for you to inadvertently teach them bad habits. Because obviously a lot of people, first dog, or sometimes people go, well, I've had a dog before and I've done exactly the same thing. But yeah, this dog isn't your last dog. So you have to tweak methods or use something slightly different. But if you don't attend puppy class until 16, 18, I mean, we have a cap on our puppy class at 18 weeks. To be perfectly honest, I think it's too old. But at the same time, we need a space for puppies to come in and get some support. In my opinion, puppies really need to be joining puppy class before they're 12 weeks old. 9 to 12 weeks is the optimum age to join puppy class. Any later than that, I feel it's a little bit too old. But obviously, we need a space for people to come to. So it's one of those needs must. We want people to come in and have the experience. If you think about it, if you don't start a puppy class till 16 weeks old, you've already had your puppy for 2 months. So in those 2 months when you've had your puppy at home, you've probably taught them things you didn't realise you were teaching, inadvertently taught them stuff that you didn't mean to, and then you've created a situation that necessarily wasn't there. Say, for example, your dog picks stuff up, steals it, runs away with it, you chase them, grab the toy, and have a little bit of a sort of tug of war with it, you snatch it off of them, you've taught them stuff. And that will not leave them. They'll always have that, this could happen. Whereas if you've been to puppy class, you'll know from a very young age how to get stuff off of them, how to create it a positive, and how to make sure they want to bring things back to you. So the earlier you start puppy training with a professional, the better. But puppy training happens the moment you get your puppy home, which is why I would always suggest to people they actually contact a trainer, get a trainer on board before you've even brought your puppy home, because then you are ready with knowledge going forward. So I know I've probably talked about this before, but our puppy class is slightly different, that we do a pre-class learning. So there's about 5.5 hours of online learning that is designed for you to watch and listen and read and take part in before you actually pick your puppy up. That way you are already hitting the ground running when your puppy arrives. So there is absolutely sort of no reason to hold off of puppy training, because say you're missing out wonderful window of opportunity. The next myth is kind of linked, but slightly different topic. I was told that you have a golden time with a puppy until they're 12 weeks old. So you have to make sure you teach them everything that's important before they're 12 weeks old. Wow, that's a lot of pressure in the first 4 weeks of life, isn't it? So first 4 weeks of life as a puppy owner, and you have to teach them everything when you're settling into the home, having sleepless nights, getting your groove. That puts an awful lot of pressure on. Now, I think the concept, I can see where it's come from, but I can see where it's sort of warped a little bit at the same time. There is a window of opportunity where puppies are, it's kind of like a period where they are sort of more sponge-like and more open to learning experience. And that generally is like their socialization early window of, I can't think what the term's called, but basically it lasts till about 13 weeks old. And it's where they are able to take on the most amount of experiences. Now, that doesn't mean we have to teach them everything, because we can teach them how to do a new trick when they're 5. But that window of opportunity is about building their confidence and exposing them to things in a positive way, so that they are seeing and experiencing stuff. And the theory is the more they see and experience, the better experiences they have, the more positive experiences they have in that period, then they'll take those forward with them. After a certain period of time, they are less forgiving almost of new experience. But again, I think that so very much depends on the dog, the breed, the individual dog, so many different factors. So I don't necessarily agree with it. And in terms of teaching them, no, you have got the rest of life to teach them stuff. Obviously, if they've never learnt how to learn, which sounds a bit weird, but then obviously things are going to be harder if you haven't done things at 12 weeks. If you can teach them the simple life skills in that period, so things like, toilet training will come, that's never going to be achieved by 12 weeks old. Recall's never going to be achieved by 12 weeks old because they haven't gone through their progression and their learning and their development. But important things like safety, dependence on people, feeling safe in their home, building a little bit of frustration in a controlled way that tests the idea of this is how you overcome it. That kind of skill, I think, can be taught before 12 weeks and is important. If they go over that, it's harder. So if a dog has never had to deal with frustration or problem solving and they're 4 or 5 or even a year old, naturally they're going to find it really hard. The earlier we build in those type of life skills, then the more they will build on them in the future. So I think for, again, sort of not necessarily teaching a skill, but emotions, I think before 12 weeks is important to introduce some things, but we're never going to achieve anything before 12 weeks. That is impossible. Gosh, these are interesting. And it just goes to show that you should never read or believe everything you read or hear, even if it's from someone really well-meaning, because there's so many, it's so individual. There's so many different points and factors to consider. One size doesn't fit all. Everybody is different. Every dog is different. Every family situation is different. And that's why you need to work with a professional who is able to adapt their training style and their method to meet your puppy's needs and you and your family's needs and lifestyle. Anyway, next one. I was told that there is not much you can do about resource guarding, and if it's really bad, the options are to rehome or euthanize. And their dog was 6 months old at the time. That is shocking. Now let's explore this one a little bit. Yes, it is a natural tendency for dogs to resource guard. We do it. Think of your resources. What do you have? If someone tried to come and take your purse, what would you do? Of course, you're going to guard it. That's mine. F off. If someone tried to take your car key out of your hand, you're going to fight for it. We resource guard all the time as people. If you've got chocolate in your hand and someone tried to snatch it off your hand, you'd be like, no, that's mine. People resource guard. The difference is that we think it's okay because it's ours and we own it. And we know that it's right or wrong to take things that don't belong to us. It's classed as stealing. So we would guard our own belongings and our possessions. Dogs do the same. The difference is, as always, the culture clash, the clash between dog world and human world. That's where resource guarding becomes an issue. So resource guarding, I don't think we've really talked about it much on the podcast, actually, but it's a very deep topic, and it's a topic that is very specific to individual cases. So I'm not going to give advice about resource guarding. I would suggest if you have a resource guarding issue, you contact a local professional trainer to help you because it will be individual to you. But resource guarding in a whole is natural for dogs. They're going to resource guard. In a dog situation, if dogs are with each other, majority of the time, not always, but majority of the time, dogs will work it out because they will have had to before humans intervened in their lives. So, for example, my 3 dogs at home, one has a tendency to resource guard more than the other 2. One did as a puppy, actually. I forgot that. Dave was actually quite resource guardy as a puppy when it came to bones and stuff, but grew out of it. He was fine with people, but towards other dogs, he'd be like, this is mine. And Fred is a resource guarder. He always has been. I think I've talked about that before. Now, I noticed at the time, my mum put her finger in his dinner bowl on the first day he came home. She was trying to help him get a little bit of food off the side. He was like, this is my first ever raw dinner. Leave me alone. And he snapped at her. And I don't think she's ever forgiven him, really. It's always like a little topic of, I love him really. But that one time, and I was like, Mum, it's your fault because you stepped into his turf. That's not on. You can't do that. She knows that. She's a dog person. So I don't know. One of those situations that you go, what on earth were you thinking? But it taught me from day one that I needed to work on it. And Fred doesn't resource guard people, towards people at all. We could, if he's got anything in his mouth, food, anything, He doesn't resource guard. He's quite happy with us walking towards him. I think I've never asked him to give me back food. With toys, he'll happily give them back. And I think if I asked him to swap food, he would, if he still had it. He eats quite quickly. But towards the other dogs, he communicates. I wouldn't say, yes, he is a resource guarder in the terms that he's like, everything is mine. But he communicates it effectively and successfully with the other dogs. He's not nasty about it. He has stuff and he grumbles and gives communication. The others say, okay, and walk away, and there's communication happening. Would you class that as a resource guarding? I don't know. Most people probably would. But to me, it's communication, because they know how he speaks. They know what he wants. He's not horrible about it. He doesn't hurt anyone. He doesn't go to tell anyone off. He just communicates, this is mine, please don't take it away. So resource guarding is often natural, but I say it's the miscommunication between dog communication and people communication, where we miss the subtle signs and teach our dogs how to feel comfortable with us being nearby. I think there's also this silly things go round that, to be a good dog owner, you should be able to take something out of your dog's mouth and take their dinner bowl away. Utter rubbish. If you just went and sat down in a pub with a pint and a plate of chips and I walked along mid-thing and took a swig out of your beer and stole your chips, you'd shout at me. Why are dogs not given that respect? Quite simply. Why do we feel that we should be able to take stuff off of them? We should learn how to communicate better. And I think at 6 months old, dogs are in that adolescent phase where they are going to test boundaries. It's where you're still getting used to each other and you haven't learned how to communicate. And a lot of it is miscommunication. Obviously, there are other reasons for resource guarding. Often there is underlying pain. There is circumstantial setup. So a lot of the time with resource guarding, yes, if it's really, really bad and the home environment is not suitable. So say, for example, you haven't explored pain, you haven't explored underlying sort of brain sort of neuro conditions, you haven't worked with a trainer or behaviourist, you haven't done any of those things, or addressed it in some way, and the home life just isn't right for that dog. So say, for example, they are a resource guarding dog who needs careful management and there's toddlers in the house. Of course, that's probably a good suggestion for rehoming, or at least considering every possible opportunity. And if it is likely to be successful that you can continually control and manage all the time, then it could work, but it may be safest to rehome. If it's a family with just adults in and the adults are on board to help the dog to learn how to overcome this, then fair. But I do think we have to look at not just the resource guarding, but the reasons for it, the causes for it, medical intervention, if it's needed, and looking at the whole picture rather than just my dog wants this and tells me off. Again, it goes back to, we talked about in a previous episode, understanding the need and the emotions behind a behaviour. Obviously, for some dogs, unfortunately, as sad as it is, if the home isn't right for them, if it's got to the point where, because obviously, as with anything, practice makes progress. We're not allowed to say practice makes perfect anymore, because what is perfect? But practice makes progress. If your dog has rehearsed resource guarding for a very, 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 very long time, so say they're 4 or 5, or a new rescue who you don't know the past, yes, to be euthanized may be the best option. But majority of responsible people, behaviourists, anyone involved with the dog will explore all of those other options first. But if it's down to a brain condition or something that we can't change, because obviously if it's neurological issue, we can't change that. If it's a pain related issue that can't be fixed, then obviously we can give them pain meds, etc., but that may not be possible. But at 6 months old, I would say there's a hell of a lot we can do, not just to help them, but to help the family to learn how to understand and how to manage and how to prevent issues from happening. I think to say tough, this or this is quite strict, it's looking at it very closed, with a very closed view. So there's always ways we can look at and improve. If you've exhausted all options, then yes, perhaps rehome or euthanize, but not as a first port of call. So we've got a couple more. These are really interesting. Actually, there's quite a few more. Oh, this is so exciting. You've got to be the alpha. Now, that's a good one. You've got to be top dog. You have got to be the alpha. Now, again, I'm rubbish. I think this is like my ADHD brain. I'm rubbish at remembering names of people and the actual facts, but I remember the concepts. So the person, whatever his name was, who did the study about dogs and dominance years ago, he did a study on wolves and connected it to dogs, that basically said that dogs are pack animals. Dogs have dominance. To be a good, to get your dog in its place, you've got to be the boss. Years later, he revisited his study, said it was a load of rubbish and disagreed with it and said dogs aren't dominant. They're not a dominant species, but nobody listened to the next bit of advice, which is great, right? So you do not have to be the alpha for your dog. Dogs do not have a pack theory, pack hierarchy like wolves would. Dogs are social beings and they live in a family unit. So they're communicative, they live socially and they learn how to respect one another. It's not about you're the boss, I have to be in control. Think of a family unit. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast again, but think of a family unit. You know how to communicate effectively with each person, not because they are the boss, but you have potentially more respect for them or you have a different relationship. So you may talk to your child differently than you talk to a sibling. You may talk to a parent different to you would talk to a grandparent because you have a different relationship and a different mutual respect than you would elsewhere, or you have the role of giving guidance or receiving guidance. You do not have to be your dog's alpha. That is not going to do anything. Generally speaking, the alpha theory is about making sure you don't let your dog on the sofa, or you don't let your dog in the bed, or you have to eat first, or you have to walk through a door first. Because apparently if you don't do those things, your dog is going to think they're in charge and take over. I mean, seriously. It's when you hear it, you just think it's ludicrous. My dogs sleep on my bed. Their dogs are on the sofa. They do not rule me because I pay the bills and I buy their food. If anything, we need to give them more freedom because we control every aspect of their life. And that must be quite horrible for them to always be at our beck and call and always at our whim. So yeah, you do not have to be the alpha. Not at all. Next one, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I think we've kind of touched on that before a little bit with the different ages of puppy training. But you absolutely can teach an old dog new tricks. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's because no one ever bothered. But you can teach an older dog things. What we always have to consider is that they'll have more prior learning and therefore more ingrained habits. That may mean learning certain things is more challenging because they're having to undo old behaviours. So think of it, again, I think I talked about it a few weeks ago about how, you go on autopilot and you sort of do things because you've always done them that way. So say, for example, you move house, you drive to your old house because your brain just does what it's always done. And then you have to retrain it to do new things. It's the same thing. If you're talking about teaching old dog new tricks, if you're talking about things that are ingrained, like, if you've created a really, really strong routine with your dog that you go for a walk at the same time every day and you do dinner at the same time every day, and then suddenly you want to change it, of course, that's going to be really hard. If you've allowed them to practice jumping up at people for the last 5 years and then suddenly decide you don't want them to do it, if you've had them off lead and they've been running around having a field day, saying hello to everybody, doing what they want to, until they're 3, and then you go, I'd like them not to do that anymore. Of course, those are going to be harder because we're having to undo all the things they've already found out are reinforcing. So the journey will be harder. Doesn't mean we can't get there. It's just a longer journey. But in terms of a trick, so a behaviour. So say, for example, I once worked with a dog years ago now who had never been taught to sit, and it was so weird. And we've done an episode on sit just recently, or I don't know if this is before or after this one, but it was so strange because I've never come across a dog that literally could not sit. And that was one of the owner's goals. I want my dog to sit. But he was 18 months old, he'd never been asked to sit in his life. And then part of me goes, that's fantastic in terms of, because you don't need it. But at the same time, the owners wanted it for a safety point of view. So, yes, it was hard because he was like, what do you mean? He'd never been lured. He'd never been used treats to train. He'd never been encouraged or reinforced to do something. So it wasn't just the sit. It was the whole concept of working out a task, having to work for the food and having to do something that was really hard for him. But he achieved it. It just took a longer time because he was that much older. But not because of the behaviour itself, but more because of the concept of learning hadn't been sort of introduced to him. So you absolutely can teach a new dog new tricks, an old dog new tricks. They'll grow out of it. I think we've done a podcast episode all about that. Have we? I can't remember. Honestly, there have been so many podcast episodes now that I forget what we have talked about and what we haven't talked about. So I'm sure there was an episode about that. Not sure. Yeah, we have. Definitely. It was about, I think it was like episode 60 something, 64. So there's a whole episode all about will they grow out of it? And absolutely is so annoying. Yes, your dog might grow out of certain things, but only if you help and encourage them and support them to learn a better alternative. They don't suddenly magically go, oh, now I'm 3, I know exactly how to behave. We have to mould and shape. And if you want to hear more about that topic, head over to episode, I'm sure it's 64. So 2 more to go. Only a gun dog breed can be trained to do gun dog stuff. Oh my goodness, no. There are, as with anything, our breeds of dogs that we have created and sort of artificially created over the years and evolved, people have interjected and we have bred different traits into different dogs to emphasize certain parts of a dog's life. Generally speaking, you've got the same predatory motor pattern for all dogs. It's just different breeds are good at different bits. So it's the survival, basically, of, most dogs have refined the art of chase, catch, kill, because that's what they did to survive. We have changed that and we have evolved that and we have given dogs jobs. But all dogs still have the ability to do other things. They just generally don't have the opportunity because you go, well, my dog's A, therefore I can't do this, which is absolute rubbish. Every dog has the potential to do every job if it's something that individual dog A wants to do, is been motivated by, and B, their owner creates opportunity. So a lot of we do scent detection and it's one of my favourite things that we do because I love it. 90% of the people that come through to do scent detection with us are gun dog breeds. So your working breeds. And it's a shame because people assume they can't do it if they have more of a companion breed or a breed that's not designed to work. Rubbish. They absolutely can. Every dog has a nose. Every dog can do scent detection. It's just some dogs have more drive for it. So we do have, in our scent detection classes, we have a lovely little pug who does really well. We have, I'm trying to think who else we have. We have a few hound breeds. We have a beagle who obviously is not classed as being, we see them as being, obviously they have a job, but we don't see them doing that kind of thing. But it's a little bit out of character. I'm trying to think what other breeds we have. But we have loads of different breeds that you would not think. We have a lot of Daxies do it. And people again go, oh, they're just a cute little Daxie. They can't do it. Gun dog. Gun dogs are basically the same as any other dog. They just have a stronger desire to do gun dog breed stuff. Any dog can do gun dog work. So if you think about it, gun dog breeds tend to be your spaniels, your retrievers, your pointing breeds, those kind of, that's the main ones. Think about poodles. Anything crossed with a poo, you're a gun dog, or a bit of you is. So if you've got a cavapoo, a cockapoo, you're a gun dog. You can do this too. We have had dogs do gun dog activities that are not gun dog breeds, and they absolutely smash it. Yes, parts of it may not be as naturally reinforcing to them. Gun dog breeds, it's bred into them, carry stuff. So yes, a non-gun dog breed might find retrieving a challenge because it's not naturally reinforcing, but we can encourage them to want to do it. We had a whippet years ago who was amazing at retrieving, absolutely brilliant. Would you expect a whippet to do it? No, but the dog liked it. The owner had worked really hard on it. They'd always done a lot of training, and therefore they could turn their hand to most things. Anyone can do gun dog stuff. So if you see, we do a gun dog workshop, we do a gun dog club. You don't have to be a gun dog breed to come. You're very welcome. Don't feel that you would be judged or not welcome at a specific activity just because your dog isn't the standard stereotypical breed that would enjoy it. You are very welcome, and you should go and you should do it and you should have fun with it. That's one thing that we are at Pods of Paws in general. We are fully inclusive. We are not breedist. We are not ageist, sizist. The only thing we would always say is if your dog's reactive, talk to us first, because we don't want to put them in a situation they can't cope with. That's it. Other than that, you're welcome. You are always welcome at whatever we do, even if you're doing it and you go, do you know what? A lot of people say to us, my dog's not very good at this. Doesn't matter. If you enjoy it and your dog enjoys it, gets you out of the house and you get to come and have a bit of a social experience, you are very welcome here. So don't ever think that you wouldn't be welcome just because your dog isn't the right breed type to enjoy a certain activity. Any breed can do gun dog stuff if it's something that floats their boat. And last but not least is our very last sort of myth. I don't know if it's a myth comment. Myth is probably the wrong word, but things we've heard about dogs. He's a spaniel. What do you expect? Now, again, this is a little bit about breed stereotype. Just because a dog is a spaniel, it doesn't mean that they're going to do certain things or not do certain things or always find certain things different. We shouldn't categorize all dogs of a certain breed to like certain stuff and to deal with certain stuff. Yes, stereotypically, spaniels might do more sniffing, might be harder to do recall, might be pulling on the lead a bit more. But I know the equally amount of spaniels who are blooming brilliant on the lead, who aren't that bothered about sniffing, and their recall's great because that's them. So let's not categorise and stereotype dogs on their breed. Let's look at them as individuals. Your dog is an individual. And yes, they may be predisposed to particularly like certain things, but that doesn't mean they are. And that's why, literally, we just had two... use an analogy I just had. We've just had two dogs in scent detection, and I said to them, they're both spaniels, and I said, stereotypically, this is what spaniels will normally do. No, I don't think I said that actually. I think I said every dog, every breed will search in a different way. You might see this, you might see that, but we'll just see what happens because I don't know until they do it. So this is what might happen. Let's see. And spaniels doing scent detection, normally we do a line up to begin with, so a straight line. Now, as I said to these guys, spaniels, straight lines, they laughed. They say, of course. Spaniels don't do straight lines. But do you know what? Those two spaniels did exactly the opposite of what I sort of had said they might do. They both searched those pipes very logistically, straight after the other. Bam, 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 bam. No spaniel twirling, no sort of going off and sniffing. And I was like, well, there you go. Just goes to show we never know what they're going to do. Which is why I won't tell you what I think's going to happen until it happens, because I said, we'll just see. And they both surprised me and didn't do what a spaniel normally would do. Brilliant. Because it's all about the individual. Yes, we can stereotype. Yes, we can kind of have an idea about what certain breeds might be prepared for. But it almost goes back to, a lot of people will say to me, but I've got this breed, they're designed to do this. Why does it do that? So I've got say, for example, I don't know, I've got a golden retriever. They are, and I've got one. They like everybody. They're good family dogs. Well, who says? So every golden retriever has the perfect tolerant temperament of life and will just be well behaved. No. The other classic is, well, I've got a small companion breed. So I've got something, I don't know, what's a small companion breed? Mine gone blank. Like it's designed to sit on your lap. I don't know, like I can't think of anything. Oh my goodness. You've got a small companion breed that's designed to sit in your lap. Oh, they're energetic, they want to do this. Yeah, cool, brilliant. That's fine. They don't have to. When you're looking for a dog breed, we advise you, and anyone will advise you, to research your breed so that you know generally characteristics of that breed. But don't take it to the letter, because we have to account for individual preference and individual character. It's what makes our dogs brilliant. If they were all the same, and if you wanted a robot, you should go to the shop and buy a robotic dog. It's about learning who they are, who their personality is. Yes, have an expectation of what they might be like, but wait and see what they actually are like. Just because they're a certain breed, we don't stereotype them. Hopefully you found that useful. I think it's quite interesting to kind of counteract what the norm and what these weird things we hear are. If you've got any others that you'd like me to do another kind of myth busting or comments on common phrases we hear around dogs, feel free to drop me a message with your phrase and I will do one of these again. But that was really interesting to debunk or hear a lot of weird phrases that you'd go, what's a load of rubbish? But it was interesting nonetheless. Hopefully you found it useful. Have a wonderful week and I'll catch up with you really soon. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.